There's a lot to digest from the very first public impeachment hearing to President Trump. To do that, I'm joined by Christina Greer, associate professor at Fordham University, co-host of the FAQ NYC podcast, and Sam Cedar, host of the Majority Report podcast and an MSNBC contributor. That moment I thought was fascinating for this reason. One of the themes from the Republicans was like, oh, this is all hearsay, and why do we have these people, not the people that talk to Trump? And I was like, do you guys understand what the argument you're making is? Mick Mulvaney should be here, or Trump himself. There's all sorts of people that we all would love to hear from.
Well, considering the Republicans have decided that subpoenas are now optional, right? So the primary sources don't have to show up, and so now we're going to secondary and tertiary sources, and now you're saying that that's not credible, and we know that all the Republicans are performing for the president who said, oh, well, this is boring, I didn't want to watch it today, even though we know that for the past 3.5 years you've done nothing but sit at home and watch television when you aren't golfing. So it's interesting, if you look at his timeline, you can tell he's been retweeting people who've been watching it all day. But the problem is there's so many people who need to be in front of this committee who are just choosing not to show up. And that is really detrimental to, I think, the democratic process.
Although I have to say, I thought the particularly Taylor's opening statement, I mean, again, it's slightly weedsy, right? Like I've been following, but I thought man, that's pretty solid set of facts you laid out.
I mean, I think this came up with your earlier guest in terms of who are the audiences. And really, I think if you look at impeachment not as its implications on the presidential election in 2020, but on the Senate, things start to make a lot more sense. Because to come out in the beginning and make the argument that the Ukrainian policy is very important to the interests of the United States, that's not for your average person on the street.
Yeah, they don't care.
I don't think most people, and I think, and frankly, if you were going to appeal to those people on the street, you wouldn't go there. You would just simply say, this is American policy, and the irregulars were not pursuing that. This is an argument to box in those half-dozen, 7, 8 senators who are going to be faced with a very difficult vote. Because if they vote against Donald Trump's not the type of person who's going to say, like, I'm going to release you on this one. Susan Collins, don't worry.
You don't think they're going to be a back channel message to Susan Collins?
Exactly. They're going to come in, and he's going to attack them because he can't have this be in any way other than party lines. And if they vote with Trump, then every person who runs against them in every election has to say one thing to point out, to say, you're either with Trump or against Trump, and you're with Trump. And Susan Collins and Joni Ernst and Tom Tillis and Cory Gardner and they don't want to be that close to Donald Trump.
You know, I think that's well said, and it gets to the thing I was saying with Tim just before about how sort of consciously, I think the Democrats and Schiff and all of them have set this up as kind of a non-ideological undertaking. You know, like it's all about bipartisan consensus of American foreign policy and national interests and duty and honor and abuse. And which I think in some ways is as it should be.
Yes.
Because I think they really are both thinking about those frontline members and those 40 seats, and they're thinking about how to bring people on board to the argument they're making.
And, I mean, this is a different impeachment trial than the Clinton days in 1996. And we saw that there was a backlash against the Republicans to a certain extent. I think what Nancy Pelosi and her camp are trying to put together is that this is actually not the same, because we are dealing with an executive who is possibly doing the exact thing that George Washington warned us against, which is cuddling up to foreign entities and going against the will of the American rule of law, the American people, and choosing a foreign power over his own nation. I mean, that's something else. There's no words.
Well, but the thing about it also is, part of my thinking, I go back and forth on this. I understand why they're sort of limiting it to this incident, because it is crystal clear and he is dead to rights. We have the call transcript.
He also said it.
Right, he said it. But to hear Bill Taylor talk about the irregular channel, the front page of the New York Times has an article about the irregular channel with Turkey that involves a Trump business partner a day before Erdogan comes and does a victory lap after the president gives him everything he wants, and we know that his personal attorney was representing a Turkish client. It's like, what do we think this was just Ukraine?
I mean, I go back and forth on this as well. I mean,
I do too.
The idea that this is a one-off.
Exactly.
This is the one time we use this methodology, and the rest of the time I mean, I think there's an argument. There's also an argument like you get Al Capone on taxes,
and it's open and shut. You do it,
and that's the way you do it. I mean, so I mean, it could go back and forth. I mean, I think there is there has been a little bit of a lack of a strategy about impeachment, broadly speaking, as to how it's supposed to fit in place. Because I think in part, for a long time, Nancy Pelosi was very reluctant to do this. And so there was a lot of catch-up that was happening at this point. And I still think there is to a certain extent. But I think, it's hard to argue with the success that they're having now.
Yeah, I was just about to say, today looked like a well-thought-out and presented hearing. I mean, honestly, the way it was run by Schiff and the testimony was like, these are the facts and this is what we got.
But the difference is, one, for the Trump base, they will, whatever Trump says is fine. Yeah. But I think the Republicans are better at spin, and they're better at essentially lying to you with a straight face and moving the goalposts. Like, they have been moving this goalpost back and forth for this president since day one.
There's also the epistemic. There's also the bubble. This is the Fox News graphic today with Bill Taylor, which I just get in before we leave here. It's all about how President Trump dismissed him as a never-Trumper. Right. White House called his testimony triple hearsay. This is what you need to know about this guy. Christina Greer, Sam Seder, thank you both for being with me tonight. That is all in this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts